01. I'd like to call to order the Salem-Kaiser Area Transportation Study for Tuesday, February 28th, 2023. And we will do a roll call really quick just for the record. So Kathy Clark, City of Kaiser.
Kevin Cameron, Marion County.
Salem.
Trevor Phillips, City of Salem, Counselor.
Polk County.
Wow, Motors, Polk County.
Transit.
Sadie Carney, Chariot, Subdistrict 3.
And who I'm missing?
Anna.
Okay, ODOT.
Anna Henson, ODOT.
And school district. And Turner.
Steve Horning, Turner.
All right, I think that's everybody, yes. The first order of business is to approve the minutes from the meeting on January 24th. Were there any additions or corrections noted? Hearing none, motion to approve as presented.
Madam Chair, so moved.
Moved by Kevin,
Second.
seconded by Trevor. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed signify by saying no. No objection. Motion passes unanimously. The next item on the agenda is public comment. Is there anyone from the public on today that would like to address the policy committee? I'm trying to see if there's any public members on there. I'm not seeing any. What?
No, there's no public.
Okay, that's what I was checking. All right, moving on then.
Oh, Maria's here.
Oh, good. Welcome, Maria. All right, so we have everybody here now. Let's go on then to our public transit safety targets. Item D, David.
David, if you want to introduce yourself to the board.
I will. Thank you. Thank you, Chair Clark and Policy Committee members. Thank you for having me this afternoon. So for those who I have not met yet, my name is David Trimble and I'm the Deputy General Manager here at Chariots. So I'm here this afternoon to provide a quick update to the district's Public Transit Agency Safety Plan, or PTASP, specifically with regard to the targets that we've set for the upcoming year. So I will first of all assume that most members know that public transit agencies receiving federal funds are required to have this such plan in place. The plan must contain in part safety targets established by the Chief Safety Officer, and that is also my role here at Chariots. The other safety professionals, the safety committee, and the accountable executive, who's our general manager CEO. So moreover, the agency safety plan must be reviewed every 3 years during our triennial review process, which actually was completed this past June of 2022 with no deficiencies of the plan noted. So that was really great news for us. Our internal safety committee approved the plan on December 22nd, 2022. The board of directors adopted a resolution to approve our plan on December 29th, 2022. So I'll get into a little bit of the targets so we have some time for questions. So is the presentation up, Ray? And then you go to the next slide. Or slide 2. Thank you. So I think it's important to be noted that we have maintained the same targets over the past 2 years, in part because we wanted to make sure that 2021 rather wasn't sort of an aberration and coming out of the pandemic. So we were a little hesitant to make too many changes. Moreover, the FTA will be making some changes to target reporting soon. That's the direction we've been given. So we'll see how long that takes. But a quick overview. Again, these are required performance measures. The targets are set annually by mode. So fixed route, which is our fixed route service locally, as well as our regional service, and demand response, which is primarily ADA paratransit service. Excuse me, we set targets based on fatalities, a number of serious injuries, And those serious injuries, can be anything that you would probably imagine of a serious nature. An employee rider fall, slip, trip, and fall, hard braking events, anything that anyone is claiming significant injury. A rate of safety events. Safety events sort of encapsulates everything, anything defined as an accident where vehicles are towed. That means our vehicle or another vehicle. Injuries transported from the scene, life safety evacuations, and any major property damage exceeding $25,000. And lastly, we have system reliability, which is mean distance between road failures. Next slide, please. So this slide does say new targets for 2023, but these are all carryover. These are the same targets that we had. We tried to be pretty conservative with our targets. As you can see, both for fixed route, local and regional, and demand response, fatalities, we never want to see a fatality. For our serious injuries, we predicted there may be about 3 for our fixed route and 2 for our demand response. Our safety events are measured per 100,000 miles, events per 100,000 miles, and the mean distance between mechanical or road failures is the system reliability. Excuse me, next slide, please. Our results for 2021, thank goodness there were no fatalities. We did have 9 reports of injuries for our fixed route service, and our safety events are under 1, which is 0.37. Our demand response fared even better. Again, 0 fatalities, 2 reports of serious injuries, and 0 system-wide safety events. I'm not sure why the system reliability is not there, but I could send those numbers later. I'm not sure whether maybe I neglected to send them. Next slide, please. So the results for 2022, no fatalities. There were 13 reports of injuries. Our safety events are tracking below 1 at 0.21%. And our system reliability is noted as 15,000, mean distance between road or mechanical failures. Demand response, 0 fatalities, 0 injuries. And they were we're tracking under 1 event per 100,000 miles at 0.2 with the system reliability of 9,000. Next slide, please. So that's the long and short of it. Not too much different from last year. Again, at some point we will see some differences once we get the guidance from the FTA, but I think we're tracking very well. We use this information to develop safety plans and safety programs for our frontline employees. And that concludes my presentation. And I guess the staff recommend that the policy committee agree to support our PTASP performance measures performance targets for 2023. Stop talking because I'm getting dry mouth. I'll answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate the data, and congratulations to everybody for the safety culture, clearly that is around transit. I have one question, and the data, is this for calendar year or fiscal year?
These are both calendar year charts or calendar year information.
Okay, and the reason I'm asking is with the introduction of the Youth Pass program and the significant increase in ridership, to see that the rates actually dropped rather than increase, I thought that was a telling statistic that the culture of safety, even with increased ridership, showed a decreased rate of injury. So that impressed me. Any other questions or comments? Director Carney.
Thank you, Chair Clark. I'm just curious, you mentioned that there were no changes this year, and thank you for the presentation and the data, but that we were likely to see some when we had more guidance from the FTA, and maybe I'm just trying to read the staff report too quickly, but I'm not sure what that guidance is expected to be and how we might expect it to change the numbers moving forward.
Director Carney, thank you. So we too have no idea what the FTA is going to come out with. So there were quite a few changes that we had to update our agency safety plan to include a different makeup of the safety committee and some other things that we had to add to it, pursuant to the FTA's guidance. And one of those sections that came out in the circular that they will be providing guidance to public transit agencies with regard to essentially how we're going to report and what that's going to look like. I imagine there'll be some tweaks. I think the information will fundamentally be the same because this is the information we report to the National Transit Database.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, so we have before us a resolution 23-6 to agree to support the public transit safety performance measure targets set by the Salem Area Mass Transit District for 2023. Motion to adopt that resolution.
I'll move to adopt.
Second.
Moved by Lyle, seconded by Trevor. Any further discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, signify by saying no. Hearing no objection, motion passes unanimously. And thank you very much. Really appreciate the work. Make these numbers, which more than just numbers is around people.
Thank you.
Thank you. That takes us to item E, which is the SKATS 2021-2026 tip amendments. Karen and Steve.
Well, I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce Steve Dobernich, my replacement. He's been here since the first of the month, and so I'm letting him take this particular item.
Well, welcome, Steve.
We stole him from Corvallis, so we're happy.
Oh, good. It's outside of this MPO, so good. Where to watch my back.
We stole Karen from Marion County. We didn't want to do that.
Well,
No, those are the same. Oh, they're not the same. Okay. You want copy from the.
Yeah, Karen's passing out, what I'm sharing now on the screen. These are a couple tip amendments to the 21-26 Transportation Improvement Program. And they both have to do with infrastructure grants that were received by CMPD very recently. And in the first case, it's a $3.2 million grant. These are both congressionally directed spending. And in the first case, it's funding that's going to go towards property acquisition and the right-of-way phase for the South Salem multimodal transit facility. And the second, so that's, I guess I'll just focus on that one first. That's this first resolution 23-4. And so like I said, it's adding that right-of-way phase for property acquisition. And then the second amendment is 23-5. And it's the same federal grant program. This one is in the amount of $7.4 million. I guess 6.8 of that is from the federal, or I'm sorry, 6.3 of that is from the federal government, and about 1 million is local match. And that's for the purchase of up to 5 battery electric buses and some of the charging infrastructure and construction of that infrastructure.
Okay.
So that one's actually a new project, whereas the other one was an existing project that they're just adding funds for right-of-way acquisition for the transit center.
Commissioner?
where is the physical location of the transit facility in South Salem? Okay, I've heard about this for years.
You want to ask that one or?
Alan's on.
Would someone?
Alan's on. You guys can tell us.
David.
Alan and David.
Hi, so the proposed location is off of South Commercial in Willsey. On the north side, there are 2 properties that are available. So if you're going south toward I-5 on South Commercial, on the left-hand side is Willsey. The property that's directly across the street from the Taco Bell, I guess is the closest landmark, is the proposed property.
Okay, thank you. Proposed, do you have it under contract or?
It is not under contract at this point.
So it's proposed, so it's under discussion? Where are
So
you in the process?
there are a series of events that need to happen. We've been in sort of hired a real estate firm to sort of inquire about the property. There is a federal process called the NEPA process that still needs to happen before we can actually go in and to acquire the property, and a few more steps. So we're working with our contractor presently to move these processes along. As you all know, Steve Dickey did retire and he was sort of well ensconced in that. So we'll have to pick up the baton and move forward. So it'll be about a month or two delay. But the next large milestone is completing the federal NEPA process to ensure that we can actually use federal funds to purchase and acquire the land.
Fantastic.
Just one more
Yeah.
question. So it says right away phase 3.6. Is that for the total amount for what you're estimating for the property? Or is this
I
for-
believe that's just for acquisition, the amount for the acquisition and of the property. I'd have to see it again. I wasn't prepared to talk about this. I'm not remembering exactly what the project was for, but it's acquisition and I believe the sort of sidewalks and access points to the property. It's phased out. I'm just not remembering off the top of my head exactly what, but the 3.6 should be primarily for acquisition at this point.
All right, thank you. Thanks, David. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Actually, that was a couple of my questions as well. Without this congressionally directed spending, what year was it anticipated that this was going to happen? Because this is an ad. And then,
So the project is a few years old. This is a restart of a project that we started. If some of you may recall, some years ago, we were looking at the Walmart property to be acquired. So there've been some new milestones, we've gone out for new funding, especially when it comes to construction cost as they are increasing by the day. So we're going to have to set some new milestones with our new vendor architecture as we move forward. Yeah, there have been a few lags and delays for a myriad of reasons, but I think we're going to get back on track here presently.
Councilor Phillips.
Yeah, thank you for this staff for this presentation. This seems like really good news. Thank you, David, for answering the questions so far. I just want to state that I believe maybe in fall or early winter of last year, we had the Salem City Council had a joint work session with the Chariots on this topic. And this is really important, especially like here in South Salem. I'm just north of the ward that this would be in Ward 3. If you want to go from this side of I-5 in South Salem to like where the Amazon distribution center is, it takes over an hour and 20 minutes, I think, according to the testimony that Steve Dickey gave at that joint work session, because you have to go downtown, get out to Lancaster, and there's just so many, connections. So once we get this, in future years, that could shorten that, that trip by, 50% or 75%. So it's just a really big deal for the community members that live here in South Salem. So I'm really encouraged to see this, and I just appreciate the work people are doing. And it's always good to get funds to make these things real.
Absolutely. The same sort of change happened when we put the Kaiser one in for people being, going from Kaiser over to Lancaster, especially our Chemeketa students. Dr. Carney.
Thank you, Chair Clark. I just want to express my enthusiasm for these two tip adjustments, as I'm sure you can imagine, and also just to give a shout out to our transit district for the amount of federal funding they have been able to secure in recent years in order to bring some of these big projects to fruition. I think it's really, when I talk to our legislative advocates, it is really almost unprecedented how much federal funding and attention we have gotten here within this metropolitan planning area. And I think it is due in large part to leadership at the district. So huge kudos to that, to the transit district. And you'll definitely have my vote on these tip amendments.
All right, are there any more questions? Director Carney, do you want to put the motion on the table?
I do. I just need to find it. Is it written out in my packet? I move.
23-4.
It's 23-4 and 23-5.
Okay,
It's
I
on the agenda
move-
cover sheet, yeah.
on the cover sheet. Okay, I'm getting there. Oh, here we go. I move to adopt resolution 23-4 and resolution 23-5, respectively, to add a right-of-way phase and update project description for key number 22356 South Salem Multimodal Transit Facility, and to add a new project for electric bus purchase and construction of related infrastructure to the 21-26 tip.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded, moved by Sadie, seconded by Trevor to adopt resolutions 23-4 and 23-5. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed signify by saying no. Hearing no objection, motion passes unanimously. Fantastic work. All right, let's go on then to item F, which is the SKATS 2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plan Draft. Ray, I think you're up.
Okay, so in your packet, there is no large amounts of text, but hopefully you had the opportunity to go out to the website and download chapters that you review and look at. And what I'm going to do this month is just provide you an overview of the chapters and what they contain. And next month, we'll talk about the appendices and then any changes that might have happened with the documents from this month's discussion. And then at the March meeting, you'll be asked to release this for public review and comment. And then in the May meeting, we will have a public hearing to adopt the long-range plan. So the TAC has been provided a review of the first draft for most of the chapters over the last year, and we've discussed some of the appendices with them. And we've also discussed a number of the policy-oriented chapters with the policy committee over the last year. And everything else is old. So what we're going to, there are 9 chapters to talk about, and there are currently 11 appendices. You'll note that the CHE, which is Cultural, Historic, and Environmental Data Sources appendice, we're going to remove. So talk about that a little bit next week. Previously in the last year, we've looked at and discussed policies and goals in chapters 2 and 3, financial forecast, and chapter 6 was discussed back in September. And the proposed system we presented in January, with some of the appendices discussed in October and August of last year. Document-wide changes, as you might have noticed last year, we start each chapter with a blurb to summarize what's being said in it, hopefully to entice people to read the rest of it and not just the blurb, but if they just read the blurb. And we're putting more footnotes to attribute where we're getting all our sources from. This also represents the regional system as of the end of 2022. So chapter 1 is been fully rewritten from the previous long-range plan, and want to set the stage for the bigger issues and policies that the plan is meant to address. Some of these, there's also discussion of the trends over the past 20 years since 1996, or 2000 to 1996. 1996 is when we started the first modern long-range plan with the federal regulations, and going out to 2050. So we're about the halfway point between when we started the modern transportation system plans and the target year, horizon year of 2050. Chapter 2 is policies. We discussed this back in May. There have been no major changes. This just summarizes federal and state policies that guide and influence SKATS and or the member jurisdictions. There's a table 2.2 on the local transportation plans, basically providing update or the dates when they will be updated, and that will be revised before the public review draft as the TAC provides me the most recent estimate of when they might update their TSPs. Chapter 3 was a big change from 2019, mainly in formatting of presenting the goal statements, and all the associated objectives, performance measures. If you recall, the goals look like this, where each goal gets a page or a little bit more, just to provide all the information of what a goal influences in the plan and what might be influencing it, either from a federal or possibly with the OTP, the Oregon Transportation Plan. And there haven't been any changes in the goals or the discussion since we discussed it last year. Chapter 4 is the existing system. This provides an overview of the complete transportation system within Salem-Kaiser-Turner area as of the end of last year. And it, there's one bit that we'll talk about briefly this month and then a little bit more next month, and that is CUFCs, or critical urban freight corridors. We need to make a change to reflect that the Salem River Crossing alignment is no longer part of those corridors, and to make a decision or not at that time of what should replace it for that. And we'll discuss critical urban freight corridors more in March and what they mean. There will also be a couple more changes in the public review draft. We've added December 2022 transit ridership. So this is showing all the ridership by month from 2019 to 2022. And we've added a little bit of discussion about the aviation master plan and funding of the terminal expansion that the city of Salem okayed last month. Chapter 5 is about needs and gaps. So if chapter 4 is saying here's the systems that exist today, and chapter 7 is saying here's where we want to be, chapter 5 is saying where are the gaps that we want projects to be implemented in that are discussed in chapter 7. Some of them are illustrative as well. So this is just various types of gaps: sidewalks, bicycles, or other needs, such as the needs of bridges to be seismically resilient or not be functionally obsolete, bring them up to good condition. Again, this is another place where the critical urban freight corridors are mentioned, so we'll have to make that change will be made after discussion at next month's meeting. There's also a change in the critical urban freight corridor table from the one that you're reviewing, as I noticed that I put in the wrong bridges, and so what was submitted was only the Center Street Bridge. So that's the one that has an active project on it that wants or could use federal funding. And this is just the table that's corrected or will be corrected as we discuss next month. Chapter 6, as we discussed last fall, this provides an overview of all the federal, state, and local funds that are forecast to be available for transportation projects from either the city or the state or transit district level, plus what SKATS has available. These have been updated to reflect the final draft project list. We finalized the tables in the chapter that show financial constraint, which is federal requirement. New this year, or this version, is discussion of the way ODOT funds their projects. And so we have a funding category, ODOT TBD, because a lot of money for projects come from legislature and they're not very predictable looking forward into the future. Some way of saying that. We'll pause. Yeah. Chapter 7 is the proposed system. We just discussed this last month. There's been just a few minor edits since last month. I added a little bit more discussion on tourism or tourism related impacts of the projects that we're proposing. This is mainly to appease the feds. It's one of their planning factors that we need to consider or mention, and so that's what we did. And we put in a little bit of information on how much the bike and ped gaps are being reduced by the projects. Chapter 8 is still in progress. There's a version on the website for review, or you could wait until next month when the numbers will be finalized. This is a unique chapter in that it represents the impacts, potential impacts of the proposed projects, and then for either cultural, historic, or environmental resources. We do this analysis, then we send it to the resource agencies at the federal, state, and tribal level to get their comments, then bring their comments back in and put it in public review drafts. So we're, during the comments from the public, the resource agencies, they made some comments regarding mitigation of mainly for wetland discussion from the Department of State Lands. There's comments on some new data sources for historic or wetland areas, and so those maps and analysis are being redone. And we revised the language to reference the data sources in the chapter, not referencing the appendix that is being removed. Final chapter is outstanding issues. This discusses the issues that are not addressed by projects being proposed for one reason or another, financial, political, or there hasn't been studied and it hasn't come, solution hasn't been identified. So that's a brief overview of the chapters. And I don't know if anyone has had a chance to review any of these, or if they have any questions, or save your question for next month. I could go into the appendices if you want to do that, or if you want to go on to the next agenda item. To discussion.
Let's press pause here. Any questions or comments on the chapters so far? Dr. Carney.
Thank you, Chair Clark. And thank you, Ray. I mean, thank you also for not sending us 248 pages of document this month. That wouldn't fit through my mail slot, so I'm not sure what our post person would do. Anyway, if we were, because I've gone through and looked at some places where I could suggest some shifts in language, probably nothing major, but adding kind of, from my perspective, a more sort of holistic lens to the plan itself. How would we best share those comments with you, or would we share them with the committee as a whole? Just interested in what is our best way to give feedback on this at this point.
Sure. Any comments, editing, anything of that nature, just send me the comments and I'll integrate them into the document as appropriate. And we will go from there. We'll also, keep track of what, we're not really in the public comment period, but we'll track, what changes are being made so we can have a discussion, provide a complete list of what changes we made based on people's comments.
And I suppose if it's a comment that's more of something that we want to bring up to the policy committee because it's something you all need to decide a direction, then we'll bring it back to you for discussion.
Yeah, but if it's just wording, minor wording or things like that.
Sure. Okay, super. Thank you.
And it'd be really great to have any comments before the 21st of March, because that would be the mailing date, theoretical mailing date for next policy committee meeting. However, then on March 28th, we would start the public comment period, so we could also get comments at that point up through May 12th. Then we want to wrap things together for the final document for presentation. So with those dates in mind.
Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you.
Good question. Any other questions or comments at this time? Full disclosure, I skimmed those those cover pieces to kind of see where we're at. I did go on vacation. All right, so I've got more reading ahead, as do we all. All right. Did you want to go over kind of where we were with the appendices at this point, or?
I can do it fairly quickly.
Yeah.
Need to restart the PowerPoint. Okay. So first appendice A is on the population employment forecast. This is the forecast for 2050 within the SKATS region. Provides a lot of information at this for city county level. So you might have use for this beyond just this document. It's been updated to reflect the latest forecast from PSRC, the Population Research Center at Portland State, and data from the Oregon Employment Department. Appendix B is a new one, it's bibliography. It's basically, since putting on all these sources, I'm trying to put, somebody wants to find a federal document that we're using or a state document, here's where you will look. It is a work in progress, so give me ideas of what more to be added in there. I figure it will take at least another update, meaning another 4 years to make this fully fleshed out. Appendix C is the project evaluation process. We discussed this sometime last year, that just how the weighting works, how the projects were evaluated to make the recommendation to the policy committee on what should be included in a financially constrained list. Appendix D is also another one that is useful outside the plan and shared with the TIP, and it just provides all the definitions that we use in this acronym build endeavor. E is environmental justice. We revised the process a little bit from 2019, and this is detailed in here. This is all the process that we're using in the TIP as well, and we're making the language consistent between the discussion in chapter 8, which is impacts, and this. I is illustrative projects. This just reflects the projects that were not selected to be included in the financially constrained plan. We knew this year we added a map to show where these projects would be. Appendix J is for the feds. It's basically a crosswalk of the federal, state, and regional goals for SKATS and how they correspond with each other. Clarity, some minor edits for clarity. Chapter 3 provides the non-federal, non-planner-ease way of looking at everything. This is mainly for the feds. It just shows how we meet some of their requirements. Appendix K, I wish to get rid of because it's out of date and hasn't been updated since 2008, 7, 11, one of those. Been a while. Appendix O is outreach. This is one that we'll finalize after the public hearing. It's just going to summarize how we talk to people, what they said, and what we did with their comments. This is from the public, the resource agencies, and other jurisdictions. Appendix P, you've seen part of this last year when you adopted the federal performance measures, and this would also include the ones that we discussed this morning or 20 minutes ago. Just another federal requirement to talk about the federal performance measures, the current targets, how we did in the last performance reporting period, which was 2018 to 2022, what the targets are for the next performance reporting period, 2022 to 2026, and how well it's gone. Appendix R is resiliency. This has been updated a little bit. We have a nice new disaster map showing all the potential disasters that can happen, seismic, flooding, landslides, etc. Some of this is meant to lay the framework to allow locals to apply for Protect grants, which is a new grant program from Federal Highway, promoting resilient operations for transformative, efficient, and cost-effective transportation. We need to confirm with the feds that this is actually sufficient for that, but we hope that it will be. And that is it on the appendices.
Fantastic. Questions or comments? All right, more reading ahead. And again, thank you. This is really well constructed. And thank you for not sending us 200 to 300 pages of paper. I like
There'll be a
PDF.
quiz at some point.
We like to save trees.
Yeah. Trees are good. Director Carney. Oh, yeah, that was an applause. Okay. All right. And I would second that. Okay. Next up will be, the OMPOC preliminary positions on legislative bills. So what you have in the Robin's Egg Blue, for those who have the paper copies in front of you, are some of the legislative concepts and bills that are, actually it's bills now, that are moving through the process and the discussion that we had at OMPOC regarding some of these. The direction is for each OMPOC member to come back to the MPOs and discuss where we land on these. So we can bring some consensus back to OMPOC as a whole. We're having a meeting at the end of March.
Mid-March.
Yeah,
No exact date yet.
have they sent that out yet?
No exact date. I think we said something out.
It's actually on March 20th at 4 o'clock. Yes. To bring all of our feedback together so we can, as OMPOC, for those things that we are aligned with, we can throw in the considerable political impact I believe we can have on the process where we agree and where we don't. Every MPO for itself. So just kind of moving through some of these, unless you guys want to talk about the concept in general, we'll just kind of start moving through these. The first one is House Bill 2101, which is directing ODOT to continue the fund exchange program. This is one that I believe the League of Oregon Cities, I don't know if they've taken a stand on this yet, but we've discussed this one, and there was a letter of support actually to support ODOT's change in how they are doing the fund exchange because of the lack of maintenance dollars.
Well, looking at the bill, this looks like it establishes, I think they've always had the fund exchange program, but I think this is established in statute.
Right.
At the 94 cents on the dollar type level. Because ODOT had been
Talking about reducing it.
talking about reducing it quite a bit and limiting, capping it at a certain level and then swapping other funds. And I think a lot of local governments are saying, wait, we depend on those funds and we need ODOT to reconsider this. So it's a hard issue. There's only so much money, and ODOT obviously is trying to maintain the state system as best they can. And it's trying to keep their state dollars for those projects, but then the locals have a hard time using federal funds. So there's really no easy solution. It's more of a compromise. So I guess the question is, do we support the bill that would establish it in statute?
Well, the City of Kaiser wrote a letter of support with LOC to support ODOT's direction to press pause here so that the operations and maintenance could be addressed in this current biennium. So this would be in opposition to the letter that the city has already submitted through LOC, between the cities.
Well, I think Association of Counties is taking the opposite approach, support of the bill.
So I don't think there's really consensus on this one, is what I'm gathering between LOC and AOC. And I'm not sure if this one is in a mode of being amended at this point,
We've had one public hearing, as far as I can tell. from the
okay, but
rules.
it's not scheduled for work session at this point.
Not sure.
Okay. So unless there's a strong feeling one way or another, we might want to move on this one.
Inside that I see yet.
It's not scheduled for anything. I'm looking at OLS right now.
Okay,
And I guess like, I don't have a comment. I would have to get some staff time to get caught back up to speed on this particular issue.
Mhm. It might be helpful, sorry for the interjection. There's testimony posted on the Oregon Legislative Information System, OLIS, and it might just help you kind of ground yourself in the who supports and who doesn't and for what reasons. I find it helpful to look at that when I'm trying to figure out what does this actually mean on the ground? So,
There's about 15 or so letters. I haven't looked at any of them except Polk County's letter, which supports the bill. All the other, there's a lot of counties that are.
Polk County got it right for a change.
ooh.
I don't see
Come
some,
off mute now.
I don't see anything officially from LOC here on the,
That's his shade. Okay,
maybe they're waiting till the later amendment.
I think that might be right. I think LOC is still looking at this one, but there has been a great deal of conversation about the O&M.
Yeah, I remember, Travis Bernard came here and talked to MWAC, I think. Came
Not damn why.
And said why they were trying to do what they're doing as far as modifying the fund exchange. Obviously, it's a big issue for locals.
Okay, then moving on, if it's okay with everybody, to House Bill 2677, requiring the Department of Transportation to provide funding plan for highway maintenance when transportation project add lane miles. And this was supported, again, this is supporting the operations and maintenance of the existing system for ODOT. So that was the position at OMPOC. So this kind of goes the other way, is to make sure that ODOT is budgeting sufficient operations and maintenance in their annual budgets.
Yeah, I don't see any testimony yet for that.
Would anybody object to supporting ODOT O&M?
It's kind of a funny bill.
Yeah, it is kind of funny
An excuse not to build lane miles because they can't find the funding
to maintain them. Yeah, I think that's maybe underlying.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's got one sponsor,
who's that?
campus. I'm sorry, it's two, FAM and campus, Representative FAM, Senator Campus.
Okay. Is there a strong feeling one way or the other to support this legislation or no? All right.
I mean,
let's
I
move
don't
on.
know how strong a feeling it is, but it seems quite sensible that if we build something, we should have money in mind for continuing to maintain. It's like my house, right? Like I'm living in it. We got some deferred maintenance here. I guess before I add anything new, I should probably take care of that thing in the bathroom, which is what we're doing. If anybody has a spare shower for 3 months.
I think a discussion on OMPOC is there hasn't been that much analysis of what this really means.
Right.
How they come up with a funding plan for maintenance, and what does that incorporate and all that stuff.
Yeah, and you know, what does that look like long term, you know, the pavement maintenance and things like that, making sure that and it really has a far more broad reaching implications in terms of reallocating funds with a heavier emphasis on O&M. So, you know, how that works out, especially when a project could, you know, as a rebuild, would that count toward O&M? Would that count toward something different? It's really hard to know what the definitions would be here. Councilor Phillips.
Yeah, I guess, thank you, Chair Clark, for those comments. Just a request or comment, like I'm a little bit used to the City of Salem's Legislative Committee, where sometimes we don't take a position on for or against, but we take the position just to track it closely. So I think that both of the ones that we've discussed, 2101 and this one, are things we should track. I don't really have a strong opinion at this time. And they can become more clear as, you know, things develop during the legislative cycle.
I would agree, and just so folks know, I think that tomorrow there is, or maybe it's today, I don't remember anymore. It's Thursday, the Joint Transportation Committee is going to be doing a pretty comprehensive review. ODOT's going to be presenting, so that's going to be a really good one to tune in. It's at 5 o'clock, so something nice to listen to over dinner. Okay, I like projects, but yeah. So and to Councilor Phillips' point, I would agree. Moving on to House Bill 2095 authorizes all cities to elect to operate photo radar if the city pays costs of operating photo radar. City of Kaiser did submit a letter of support to the League of Oregon Cities to include in a support package for this, and this was a this is aligned with the League of Oregon Cities transportation priorities.
So in the urban growth boundary, is counties in here?
I think this is just for cities.
This is for
So,
cities.
so I'm just thinking of, you know, Salem, Kaiser, Marion County, and we've got some roads that are intertwined with the city, within the city limits. Might want to look at it as within the urban growth boundary to allow counties to do it. Like Cordon Road or someplace like that where we've got high signal traffic issues. And what if it's a county road versus coming into city road? What's the, so I think maybe looking at urban growth boundary area somehow,
Right, see if there'd be
if it's
amendment
outside
to-
the city limits.
Like Lancaster who goes in and out.
Yep.
and in.
Absolutely.
That's what I was thinking.
Some of those,
Center, yeah,
we're doing
yeah.
some projects on Lancaster right now. I want photo radar for.
And I would, you know, agree with that. Right now,
Not that
only
I
10
wanna
cities
do it.
are allowed to do anything.
Who?
So only 10 cities currently are allowed at all. So this is going to open it up to all cities under certain parameters to be able to do so. And the included is a signage as an educational component. So this is not a gotcha program, but a highly informational and reminders that, you know, this is not a street outlaws project.
I think Councilor Phillips, correct me, but I think the city of Salem was in support, or you have your hand up, maybe you're about to say
Member
that.
Phillips?
Yeah, I can't remember the specifics of the last legislative subcommittee. I believe we were supportive. I know that personally I am supportive. I don't think it should just be limited to 10 cities. So I think it needs to be, you know, more statewide. And I'm certainly not opposed to like an even bigger, you know, more comprehensive look at this that extends outside of the city limits to within urban growth boundaries. I would just have a follow-up if we were to do something like that. Who would then fund it? Would it be funded by the counties? Because I think that, you know, the current expanding to the cities, it's the cities that fund it. So I just want to kind of verify like who's then funding it if it goes a little bit outside of city limits.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner?
Yeah, whoever operates the signals. I think that's Salem.
And with that, so what I'm hearing from folks is that there's support for this bill and that if there's opportunity to expand it to UGB, that would be something that the group would support. I'm seeing some thumbs up, head nods.
Yeah.
Anybody object to that? All
I
right.
mean, just a clarification on the funding. I'd like to talk to staff, but like broadly speaking, very supportive.
And noting for the record that this is not a money maker type of project. It is for safety. All right, local speed limit setting. The League of Oregon Cities supports this bill. City of Kaiser has concurred with this. It allows for a process that local jurisdictions can go through a process to lower speed limits in more than 5 mph increments. There are some that want to do some functional reclassification and do larger jumps. But this would be a process and it wouldn't be, I just feel like we need to lower this. There is a process involved. I'm looking at Lonnie. Yeah. Any comments on supporting this bill? Director Carney.
Thank you, Chair Clark. Big fan. I like allowing local authority to decrease speed limits in places where they deem appropriate.
Thank you.
Big support.
I'd like to play one with that. Councilor Phillips.
Same, yeah, support. I mean, there's been a lot of back and forth already in the past couple of years on trying to get, speed limit reductions that are, popular and well supported by people that live here. So we would like more local control as well.
Julie.
I haven't spent a lot of time with this particular bill, but I do want to make sure that people understand that the delegation of this authority to change speed limits is ODOT still requires that jurisdictions follow their process. So it doesn't mean that a popular reduction can actually be approved by the jurisdiction. So anyway, I just want to make sure because it's a little bit, ODOT has been misleading in their communication about the delegation.
Yeah, this,
I'd like to blame it on ODOT.
We still can. We can still blame it on ODOT.
okay.
Love you, Anna. Councilor Phillips, did you want to follow up?
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess I'm remembering that there might be more to this one. And that's why I really thank Julie for being here and reminding us of that. Is this the one where like we get to pay for it, but it's still up to ODOT?
Yes.
Oh,
We
yeah.
I said,
So,
let ODOT have it. I think
yeah.
there's another bill though,
I know, that's where I get confused between the
another bill that would do this without that.
Okay,
Okay.
I'm not super into each detail of each bill. I just know that right now it's just sort of okay, you can do it and now you can pay for all the work, but you have to follow our rules.
Okay.
So that's not really very helpful.
Maybe just track it.
Yeah.
Well, with the idea that we support this concept of being able to do it by larger increments, by going through a process by which that would occur. Okay.
But it is part of.
Or maybe we just support like notwithstanding section 2 sub 3 or whatever. Just take out the part that says cities do all the work and ODOT.
There's
makes
not a
the
specific
decision.
bill number in our sheet here. That's not a problem.
Well, there's
Oh,
a,
it's House Bill 2095
Currently part of that, because it says.
and it's in section 2.
Fill us all with the photo radar.
I knew I need to talk about the road. It does.
Line 22.
What? We need to talk about what?
Offline unit,
Oh.
you talk about river. Okay, so I'm getting general support. So as we go into that conversation at OMPOC, as this evolves, that we will be able to say our MPO supports this concept and we'll see how it evolves with the rest of the state. And if we can get ODOT to pay for it, great, but if not, we still want the ability to initiate or work through this process.
The way I look at it is it's changing existing state law from that 5 miles to 10-mile increments.
Right,
But as Julie said, and as I recall, there's a whole process that a city has to go through to say, here's our plan for reducing speeds, and ODOT has to bless that process.
right.
It's not just like carte blanche, you can change it.
For example, if it's related to your 50 percentile speed. I'm looking at Lonnie to see, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but so as an example, we just did some counts out on River Road South in the city portion where they wanted us to go from, I'm trying to remember now, from what to what.
45.
Yeah, so they wanted us to go down, and the 50th percentile speed, you have to be more than 5 miles an hour. Different.
Depends on the road. Some of our roads we do 85th percentile, but yes, it's It needs to be within that 5 mile, yeah.
Right, so
5
you
mile per
can't,
hour
I mean,
radius. You can't, they don't want to drop in less than 10 mile per hour. Yes.
yeah, so anyway, but basically, there's a 180-page manual that you have to follow.
We have to, but the big picture is the agency that is requesting the study by ODOT actually does the work first, makes the recommendation based on the study, and then ODOT goes and performs their own study, or maybe uses your data, but often goes and performs their own study. And there's more than just the data. They're looking at the context and they're looking to make sure that it just, yeah, it's not just the data, it is looking at the context.
Yeah, because they have that document called BUD, Big Urban Design, came out with like a couple years ago that set speed parameters within urban areas.
With the roadway
Yeah.
context in mind.
Yes,
Yeah.
the land use context. in mind.
Yeah, and so there's a little bit more into it than that, but they do require the local agency to do a lot of the upfront work. They may repeat it or go off of your data. And it takes a fair amount of time. We plan for a year. So that's another. crux.
So is it support the concept, but want more info?
As it support the concept, and if it advances this, this ability to make these changes in up to the 10 mile per hour increments, then we're in support of that. It's all taking those incremental steps. Okay. Next, House Bill 3113 for on the Great Streets Program. And OMPOC supports making the Great Streets funding available for not just state highways, but also local streets that service Main Street jurisdictions so that we can do that same sort of urban upgrade or great, whatever, what they're now calling great streets. Mike, do you want to address this? This is something you've
Yeah,
been
well,
very,
Right, it was about a year ago, this new program, when the IIJA funds came, the federal funds came, and ODOT had a lot of money and they were deciding what to do with it. They established this Great Streets program. But in the details, it was like great streets, but for ODOT highways going through, like a main street through a town, So a lot of it was maybe, 82nd Avenue in Portland or Powell Boulevard in Portland, or it could be 99W through McMinnville, but it had to be like an ODOT facility. And we don't have that many ODOT facilities here, but we have a lot of streets that have a lot of volume. Look at Lancaster, as an example, or South Commercial. So we wanted that change to say it could be used on other streets beside ODOT facilities. So I'm happy to see that this one, would allow that flexibility so that other areas who don't have a street that's a designated state highway could still maybe apply for this program, because the average driver doesn't care. State highway, it's a local road or a county road. If it needs to be fixed up, if it needs better facilities, and it kind of qualifies to a major arterial, then should be applicable to get, or eligible to get those funds.
and the current bill, House Bill 3113, I don't believe includes the local streets, but this is something that OMPOC supports so that we can support House Bill 3113, but also support an amendment to add in the local streets that serve in this functional classification. Director Carney, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Chair Clark. A couple questions about this one. Is there any relationship between the Great Streets program and the Main Streets?
No.
Familiar with the Main Streets program?
Yeah, that's a different program. Is
Okay,
it Main Street through?
An economic development program.
yeah,
Downtown.
yeah. I think some similar outcomes, but yeah, more of an economic development. Okay, so no Venn diagram there. And the other is there a definition in law or rule on what constitutes a main street?
Yes, I believe it does. It has to do with the functional classification.
Okay, okay.
Is it, I see Lonnie thinking.
I don't know about that. It could be that we just don't have any information.
I mean, like, this is what they're using like for Powell Boulevard, right? I mean, this is
Right.
that type of urban upgrades that are
As I look
Okay.
at the bill,
Yeah.
Bill, it's coming not out of gas tax, but it comes out of the general fund.
Uh-huh.
For improving safety and increasing walking, biking, transit, so.
The highways that serve as community main passes,
Right.
through streets,
Yeah.
makes me think there isn't probably a definition, it's just serve as.
Yeah.
I don't know how they're gonna define that.
And it's a blank dollar amount right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They could say, they could
It's
say.
a very,
$10
it's
million,
very
or they
short
could
piece
say
of
100.
legislation.
So I'm sure during bill development, they'll think about what those numbers might be.
When I see,
There's an immersion.
yeah, they want to. Was that?
Everything.
Well, yeah, they want to do it yesterday. Counselor Phillips and then Commissioner Mordhorst.
Thank you, Chair Clark. I think I've already testified in support of a concept like this during the IJA process. We have that McGilchrist Street that is a great street, but is not a highway. Fortunately, we've gotten the funding, started from the federal project recently. But, if Lancaster is another example, I would definitely be in support of expanding the scope to not just highways, but to the great streets as well. So I think I'm already and continue to be in support of this concept.
So we would, if that was the position, we'd want to take out that phrase on state highways.
Right. Commissioner Mordhorst.
This bill here is really needed badly. When you drive through Dallas, Independence, Monmouth, Amity, all of these smaller towns where these highways are made, they're main streets. We continuously keep hearing we have no funding for it.
Yeah.
And those towns have no funding or availability to ever afford to redo their main streets. And that's the purpose of this bill, is just to get that back in line. Some of the patchworks that were done this summer is pretty rough. So I really hope that we can support this bill as written, just to take care of those smaller communities.
As a priority. Yeah. And again, not everything going to 82nd in Portland, but making sure that we are taking care of our smaller jurisdictions. Okay,
Well, I guess it comes down to a question, what does SKATS want to support? That it be on state highways or allow any major arterial? It really comes down to.
Probably, I'm sure,
Please.
maybe a little bit divided from what I'm listening to the discussion, because currently the bill is just on state highways.
correct.
I've heard, or I'm reading here that on local streets too, well, you start spreading the peanut butter out that thin and we don't get anything done in some of these smaller communities. So, I know as a county commissioner, I'd be supportive of the way it's worded currently. Because we have places like St. Paul where a state highway runs through it, and you can't get anything done. That to me is a bigger priority than Lancaster. Commissioner Phillips, we're doing some projects on Lancaster now. City of Salem's done, that we seem to be able to find the funding over a period of time. So smaller cities, I think another one for us is Jefferson Highway running through it. It's hard to get money for. So, Aurora, yeah, 99 goes through there.
So with what I'm hearing is a priority for our smaller jurisdictions, our small cities, to be able to get projects done.
One thing I just like to interject in there also, when it's our side streets and stuff, we can address them without having to work with any other municipalities. It's our streets. When it's a state highway street, you can't just go and do the repairs and work on it. It's an ODOT's road. So we require ODOT to give us permission and require and provide that maintenance. And that's the challenge that Lancaster, we can find other grants and do things ourselves and work with city and county. But these cities with the state highways, main streets don't. Is that correct, Anna?
Are you asking me?
Anna.
Anna,
You're on mute. Go on.
Oh, there she
Yeah.
is, yeah.
She's just on mute.
Anna, you're on mute.
Okay.
Maybe Dan can talk for her.
Okay. Yeah, I think, if it's okay with you, Anna, I'm gonna circle around to, Counselor Phillips and Dr. Carney. Circle back.
I mean, thank you, Chair Clark, and thank you, commissioners, for kind of bringing up the real world constraints that we're discussing. What I'm hearing is that, once again, we do not live in an ideal world, and that this may, in fact, by, supporting the amendment that I theoretically would be in support of, kind of defeats the purpose. I don't feel strongly enough to like oppose. I'm perfectly willing to be neutral on this and let the consensus be supportive of the original one. I just know when we were kind of looking at the IGA funds, it was frustrating that we couldn't, get a place like McGilchrist considered. But I hear what you're talking about, and I get it that those are ODOT facilities. So that is more tricky. I'm perfectly willing to be neutral and understand where you're coming from.
Mhm.
Dr. Carney.
Thank you, Chair Clark. This has been really interesting conversation, so I appreciate it. And I'm kind of trying to think this through again, how does this look on the ground? And so I don't know that ODOT is able to comment, but if it were like a competitive grant award, then I still think that larger jurisdictions that have, an ODOT highway coming through them are more likely to get the funding. So I wonder if we are looking at this, through our metropolitan planning area lens and thinking about these local applications, especially for smaller cities that would benefit from this kind of investment, maybe there should be a population threshold that says, for, state highways that serve as community main streets in communities smaller than 10,000, right? I think that would still get Monmouth, but Independence is just over. So just if we are thinking about it as a way to help our, what you might classify as rural communities or smaller cities, maybe there's a way to put in some kind of a caveat like that.
So we'll have to look at some definitions, have what they're doing in the legislation as well.
Yeah, this might be something to talk about at your legislative committee meetings at the COG level, to see if you can craft some letter or suggestions of how that's implemented so that neither big cities nor small communities get or exclusively get the funds, that it be some kind of equity in how it's distributed.
I like that idea. Anna, you finally got back on. Yes?
I'm so sorry. Yes, I'm here.
So,
can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Okay, so I think I got asked a question, but did it get answered while I was reconnecting, or can someone repeat the question to me and I can try to answer it?
So Anna, we were talking about small town main streets that are state highways such as Amity and stuff. And then to get those repaired,
yes,
ODOT has to approve everything and they provide that maintenance? Is this got to do with themselves?
you have to get a permit well, ODOT would do the maintenance, right? If we have the money. If someone wanted to come in and do some work on our right of way, then you have to go through the permitting process through our maintenance office. So yes, it's not as easy as the city of Amity, for example, coming in and being able to do some repairs, unless we've jurisdictionally transferred that section of our highway over to that local agency.
No, thank you.
Come on.
Yeah, nice.
That was quick.
Mr. Phillips wants all Lancaster.
Bring it all into the city. All right, so I think I hear enough direction from this group as we go into the conversation on OMPOC, but also see if we can bring this to the legislative committee for additional work that we might be able to do something from our area in support of our small jurisdictions to be able to get the funding for the maintenance they desperately need. Is that what I'm hearing? Okay, I'm getting head nods. All right, gotta keep this moving. Tolling. So this is several bills. I don't have bill number here, but I know that there's been a lot of discussion about this. OMPOC is supporting the League of Oregon Cities stance that tolling should pay for the project and for the impact of tolling on the local neighborhoods. Is there a position that our MPO would like to take? Or would our MPO object to supporting the League of Oregon Cities position? Will it be a deal breaker for anybody?
You know, I think this is mostly a hot issue, obviously, in the Portland area.
Yeah.
Clackamas County, things like that, I-205s. It's not affecting us currently
Yet.
yet.
But eventually, if tolling is used elsewhere, whatever precedent is set will affect other jurisdictions. So I think thinking about the long term.
But not only that, like just starting tolling, you're saying, it's also the more expensive it gets for people to travel to Portland, the more they're going to stay down further south.
Right.
Yeah, and you
How
know,
it impacts our road.
they toll the Boone Bridge, for example. It's gonna impact our fog area, right? Quite a bit.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if I've seen anything to show.
Huh?
I don't know if I've seen anything to show any numbers on that. I think they're out there though.
Numbers on,
How it could impact us down here.
if they toll the Boone Bridge, well, it impacted anyone crossing the Boone Bridge. I don't know exactly their schedule for precisely. I mean, we're talking about I-205 to start with, but following ODOT's polling program, it looks like a lot of I-205, a lot of I-5, Columbia River Crossing, and I think as far south as Boone Bridge, but it's still conceptual. Precisely, they're gonna put the toll pantries, things like that.
So is there a bill number on here? There is not.
That's because there are multiples. They're moving through the process. I'm not sure when the sausage will be complete. But it's something that, especially at OMPOC, is a hot topic. Probably because of Mexico, but some of the other jurisdictions also see this potentially impacting them later.
It's really a good example of cost shifting.
Mhm.
Because it'll increase our costs, decrease their expenses and increase their revenue.
There's something floating around and I
Yeah.
need to find it.
Right.
So does our MPO want to take a position on tolling or to sit it out? Counselor Phillips.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Clark. Have we taken a position on this as a body in the past?
Nope, not that I'm aware of. No.
Okay. I don't think I feel strongly enough to oppose. It'd be nice, this is just a comment. It would be nice if we could link it to like other things at the same time. I know the city of Salem adopted an effort to look at expanding light rail down to Wilsonville and potentially even all the way down to Salem. So we could kind of show that we're not just doing tolling for tolling, but we're looking at it in a multimodal way.
Yep, and Kaiser wrote a letter of support for that study as well, the West Extension.
Yeah. Cool.
And I don't think I think that's unanimous on the entire alignment. So, but on the tolling issue, I'm not hearing a consensus of, yeah, we're really gung ho or heck no, but that I don't hear a strong position on tolling as a whole.
I'm sure I'd just be interested to see what all the kinds of bills that are out there,
Yeah.
what they propose to do, and just watching it, I think.
Yep. See how how it comes together. Okay.
Director Phillips.
Yeah. Okay, let's go on then to House Bill 2619, which modifies the membership of the Oregon Transportation Commission. So ODOT has had a difficult time recruiting for OTC membership and retaining people. I mean, that's been a revolving door.
The Chair Clark, I remember, and we looked so quickly, but I remember looking at it earlier, it really does expand the number of members. Currently, there's 5 OTC members. This would both expand it, but also give some different categories that we would like to have on the commission. You can quickly look it up. I know I've made this point at other meetings that our area, the COG area, doesn't seem to have an OTC member for many, many, many years. There's always a Portland member or 2. It's always one from east of the Cascades, Southern Oregon. And then the 5th member kind of floats between Eugene and the coast. And never one from Marion, Polk, and Yamaha County. So maybe expansion would be a beneficial thing to our area.
Let's spread out the ability to actually attend ACT meetings. That's something we've noticed with our ACT. We've had one meeting where an OTC member has attended in my recent memory. And that was Commissioner Brown.
Virtually.
Yeah.
Yeah, virtually.
So this would establish 9 members on the OTC.
And we spread it out
From
across.
the current 5 to 9, and they say 1 member who's not attained 25 years of age, so they want someone young. 1 member whose primary method of travel is other than motor vehicles, so they're starting to put in like not just how many, I don't think it says where yet, but it says what kind of composition they want for membership. 1 member who's a person with disability or has a family member with disability or an advocacy group for disabilities. 1 member who represents the interests of Oregon Indian tribes and has knowledge of tribal transportation issues. And there's more to all these. And
Where they're located is part of it, yeah.
1 member of the commission from each congressional district in the state, so that no more than 3 members reside in the same congressional district. So that's kind of the compositional changes to it.
So that's 6 of the 9.
Mhm. And some of them can overlap. So let's say the person from a particular congressional district also is a tribal member or a tribal council.
Person under 25 is a bike rider and a disabled or something. Yeah.
That would be a fun job trying to.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was.
So I'm hearing support for the expanded number, and so at OMPOC, if there's support for House Bill 2619, are we good with saying sure we don't have an objection to it? What's it gonna hurt to have more? Okay. I know this is, getting later in the hour, but this is the last really big piece. Looking at House Bill 2301 and several others, this is an ongoing effort for essentially road user fees for electric vehicles. And there's so many versions of this, but I think there's been a lot of work over the years to shift to charge electric vehicles for use of the roads.
Yeah, this is essentially would, allow a fee, tax, a fee for the charging that everyone does for their electric vehicle.
It'd be a tax on the electricity.
Electricity, yeah. While you're charging, it'd be so much per kilowatt would be the tax.
Right. And then the user makes the records and retains it. So the ones that I was looking at, it all puts the onus on the user to figure out how much of their electricity is being used to charge their car or truck or whatever. And then report that to ODOT or and pay the bill, which is somewhat problematic and keep records for 3 years.
Maria?
Thank you, Chair Clark. I was looking at the bills and I was kind of thinking that maybe we could separate them out, because like they are similar in some ways. Yeah, like the 2301 is like taxing the use of the kilowatt hours. And it also states that like the annual average tax would not go over $1,000, that it would be less than $1,000. So I mean, like, honestly, like it feels like pretty small potatoes. And it also, the way that I read it, so it was interesting to hear, I felt like it put the onus on the people that had the structures, because it talks about commercial charging stations, commercial and private residential structures, regardless of number of individual dwellings. Like, I just feel like there's like a lot of questions for me on 2301. And then for 2658, this is like the one that I think like should be pulled out, because it seems to want to direct DEQ to establish a competitive grant program for construction, operation, maintenance of infrastructure projects to reduce carbon and other greenhouse gas emissions. But also the way that I read it, it was DEQ imposing a tax on everyone, not just electric vehicles. So that's why I was thinking like maybe it should be pulled out of this little clump of bills that we were talking about.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Also, I thank you for Dr. Carney for the piece out of 2301, where there's fines, imprisonment, or both. That's
Yeah, it seems intense for your EV.
a little bit.
Whoa.
So, you
If
know,
you lie, is that what it is? You lie about your electricity.
yeah, so that makes you we can't even put people in jail for actual assault. Counselor Phillips.
Thank you, Chair. Conceptually, I mean, I think we as a electrical vehicle owner and driver, I think we do have to move to something that's somewhat analogous to vehicles mile travel. I don't know that any of these bills are, the right bill in terms of the devil's in the details, but I'm definitely very strongly in support of, figuring something out that is, fair and equitable, that does, have us pay our fair share for the vehicle miles that we are traveling, or as close as we can get it. It's just difficult in terms of like privacy and, trying to hit the nail on the head. So I think we should track these. And if we can convey like the general idea of support, because we are, regardless of our personal beliefs, we're going to see less, gas consumption as vehicles continue to get more efficient over time. And there is, an industry-wide, transition towards electrification. So I think this has to happen, but I just don't know that these bills are the right bills without some either amendments or page 1 rights.
Does everybody pretty much agree with that? Looking for supporting road user fees in general, but these bills all have specific issues that are not necessarily going to get us there. So this is we'll watch these and see if there's one that emerges that we can bring back to the group. I think OMPOC's gonna be doing the same thing. Maria.
Yeah, I think maybe in so far, the only one that really seems like maybe somewhere headed in the right direction, because it's literally just a feasibility study of imposing a tax, is 3131.
Yeah.
So like the other two, maybe just kind of like we'll track, but I mean, I think if we're leaning towards like supporting some sort of fee, 3131 would probably be one that we'd support.
Okay. All right, sounds good. We're down to the last ones. The Senate Joint Resolution 2 proposes an amendment to the Oregon Constitution to authorize use of motor vehicle related tax revenue for infrastructure that reduces traffic burden of or pollution from motor vehicles on public roads in the state. For me, this would be a hard no, because this with the words amends Oregon Constitution. So I don't mind working on these issues, but amending the Constitution is where I really, no.
I think it has to be an amendment to the Constitution because right now the Constitution restricts using the state gas tax. So
Yeah.
in order to use the state gas tax for these purposes, you have to change the constitution.
I'm not ready for that.
I guess we'd go to the voters then. Right.
I guess-
It goes to the.
Yeah.
If they voted out of the legislature, otherwise,
Anyway,
what are they trying to change?
they want to be able to use the gas tax for purposes other than what it is required to be used for right now.
Right, so it says the actual language is, the main part of the actual language, the purpose is, it can be used for surface transportation infrastructure that reduces traffic burden of or pollution from motor vehicles on public highways, roads, and streets in the state.
Ooh, that's pretty broad.
Yes.
It is broad. You can read a lot into what that might be.
So off-street trails. Trails would be one thing. Could transit be part of it?
Possibly, other programs, but yeah, it's extremely broad. And we already don't have enough operations and maintenance dollars now.
I would be a
that's-
hard no on this as well.
All right, thank you, everybody, for working through this.
Wait,
Yeah,
I'm sure.
Yeah.
So ODOT could actually pay me to walk. Based on this, they could actually use gas tax to pay me not to drive my car.
No, because it looks like it has to be used for certain infrastructure and
Well, sidewalk.
your shoes are,
My shoes.
maybe. Concrete shoes.
Okay,
so maybe we're walking.
all right.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Very helpful background conversation, and I will be in the meeting for OMPOC on March 20th. And of course, anybody, and all of you will get that link if you want to tune in. Tip modification, no, we're at H, the Metropolitan Transportation Safety Action Plan, TSAP.
So that project has started. We have a project management team consultant on board. We started crunching the crash data, and we're looking at that. But the big first, which is public outreach. So we're doing an online open house that I've already helped the consultant develop. And we're asking the public questions about what kind of situations do you feel unsafe when you're driving your car, when you're riding your bike, when you're walking, when you're in transit? How safe do you feel with any of those things? And then some potential solutions. What kind of solutions do you generally support? So they'll have a chance to answer those broad questions, the survey questions. They can also go on to the online map and tell us, this street on South Commercial, this location on South Commercial, they feel unsafe for whatever reason they want to specify. So we're doing a big push. We're trying to get a lot of the public to answer our questions. I'm going to need the help of your agencies to kind of push this information out. Social media, particularly, or other things you use, community newsletters, things like that. The open house starts March 13th and goes to April 3rd, I believe. One thing to do is we're sending out 30,000 postcards in the urban area. In addition to social media, we're doing some things in the newspapers, things like that. Then our consultant is also reaching out to community groups for focus discussions. So we want to have 4 focus group meetings, 10 people per focus group. They have a list of organizations they are contacting. They're particularly interested in getting organizations that represent the lower income and minority populations in our urban area. So that's getting worked on. And then lastly, and this is probably something more directly toward the policy committee. Last month, we talked about the steering committee. So we have almost a full steering committee. From Salem, Trevor Phillips and Commissioner Stapleton will be on the steering committee. Kaiser, Tammy Kuntz, one of the neighborhood association chairs, and very active in this topic. Sadie Carney volunteered at the last policy committee meeting. Nick Forty, who's the federal highway person and also quite active in SKATS. He's his traffic neighborhood chair in West Salem. And that phone call I got at 12:30 was ODOT Nicole Charleston say she'll be on the steering committee. So the steering committee will meet probably about 4 times. They'll get updates on the open house outreach results, the crash data. We're going to look at 20 locations of possible study and then narrow that down to 10, come up with recommendations, kind of preliminary recommendations of what that can be used for. And this whole process, develop the draft plan, take about a year to the end of this year. We'll have another open house when we have the draft plan and the policies and strategies developed for that draft plan. So we're still on that kind of first steps of the study. But I want to make you aware of it and ask for your staff's help in spreading the word about the open house to start with. I've already talked to a number of groups. I talked to Lieutenant Bennett and Sergeant Leday. I'm going to ask those police departments to help us spread the words because they have quite a large following on social media. So there's a lot of wheels turning at the moment to get the message out about the public participation part of this. Any questions?
Counselor Phillips.
Thank you, Chair Clark, and thank you, Mike. I think that maybe my audio went bad, but what's the date or time of the beginning of the open house?
March 13th.
Okay.
It goes to April 3rd. It's about 3 weeks. 3 weeks for the public to respond to the survey questions.
Okay, cool.
And things on the map.
And then follow-up question, more selfishly, I thought I had responded yes, or were we meeting, and when is that task force's first, get together?
I don't have a date yet.
Okay, we're still in the process of scheduling.
Probably be toward the end of March after the open house, so we can review the open house results. I'm sorry, not March. It might be in April. If you want to look at the results. So to be determined. I just recently heard from Mayor Hoy that he wanted to have Virginia Stapleton on the committee. Like I told you, I just heard from ODOT, so we don't have a full committee yet, but almost full.
Thank you.
Director Carney.
Thank you, Chair Clark. I just want to say great job working with the consultant. I'm super excited about all of the community engagement efforts. I know it is hard work. I know it is expensive work. I know it is slow work, but I think it is so important. And I think it really adds value and sort of government credibility to our outcomes. So just kudos on making those efforts on our community's behalf. I'm really excited.
Yeah, and anyone who wants to help me with this, and I know I had talked to.
Why don't you say that again?
You have a bunch of staff sitting over there?
I do have staff. I do know community groups, and I think I talked to Maria and Councilor Gonzalez about this, about be touching base with you. We were going to meet after the SKATS meeting today. Talk about this some more. Maybe we can touch base this afternoon. I want to make sure we're reaching out to either communities we haven't got a nice contact with, either for just generally spreading the word about the open house, or recommending people who might want to join us for the focus groups. So I'm actually talking with my consultant this afternoon on the status of that outreach and see where they're at. They've contacted about 20 organizations so far. So.
Who's your consultant, if you don't mind my asking?
JLA.
Oh, great. Jane Lawson. Cool.
Let Anna back in.
Question?
Yeah, I do. Mike, what's the time commitment on the steering committee?
Probably 4 meetings, possibly a 5th meeting. So maybe every 2 months or so.
Couple hours probably.
Yeah.
Reviewing things in between.
Reviewing things. We still have to figure out what time might work for everyone. So, are you interested in being on the steering committee?
Sure am. Okay. Actually, I was going to volunteer Lyle, but is he still here? I want to take a look at it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Good. All right, good work. Good. Tip modifications, item I.
So the 3 tip modifications that you see in your attachment are the 3 amendments that you approved last month. So, nothing new.
Fantastic. All right, under other business, the next Oregon Transportation Commission meeting is on March 9th. It'll be here in Salem and of course available virtually. Our next policy committee meeting will be on March 28th. And I did point out that OMPOC will be having our legislative meeting on March 20th. And the TAC meeting will be on March 14th. And I want to finish with a huge thank you to Karen.
I'm gonna stick around a little longer. You'll see me a little longer. My time is, very few days a week now. We will be releasing the tip for public review in your March meeting. And after that, I kind of go to just barely until.
Okay.
And I'm gone at the end of. Okay.
All right, so
Yeah.
But you don't adopt the tip, I'm gone that day.
okay, but message received loud and clear. Well, we can't say thank you enough, and thank you for making sure that we've got a smooth transition here. And welcome, Steve. Glad to have you on board, and looking forward to working with you and continuing the trajectory that we have as an MPO. In a very positive direction. Anything else for the good of the order? All right, the time is 1:42 and we are adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.